We can start now, I believe.
No problem.
Sure. So, hello and welcome to this special post-budget show on BW TV. Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has presented her seventh budget. And, the broad theme of continuity seems to be ever pervasive with some elements of change. And quite evidently, because of the recent political dynamics which have changed, we've seen some accommodations. We have about 30 minutes and 7 panelists. So we have a lot of ground to cover in 30 minutes. Before that, quick round of introductions. I have with me Maninder Singh, who's founder and CEO of CEF Group, Rohit Patiria, co-founder Lark FinServe, Naveen Kulkarni, Chief Investment Officer, Axis Securities, Anubhav Gupta, Chief Strategy Officer, APL Apollo Steel Tubes, Gunjan Prabhakaran, Partner and Leader, Indirect Tax, BDO India, Mr. R.P. Gupta, Economist, Industrialist and author, and Mr. S.P. Sharma, Chief Economist and DSG PhD Chamber. Panelists, my first question to you, and it resonates with the broad themes of our topic, which is the big picture. What is that big picture that you've got in these 2 hours since the budget speech, ended by the finance minister? What are the elements of continuity that you have seen, and what are some of those elements of change that you saw? Mr. Gupta, R.P. Gupta, if you would like to start.
Yeah, by and large, budget was good, especially for job creation, MSME and farm sector. I would like to speak on 3 points. Firstly, GDP estimate. Secondly, your government capex and fiscal consolidation. And thirdly, on jobs. Thereafter, if time permits in second round, I will speak on the exports. So as far as the GDP estimate for FY25, in the budget for nominal GDP, it was 10.5%. It is achievable. Real GDP estimate was not given in the budget, but in the economic survey, it was 6.5 to 7%. That was achievable. That is achievable. But somehow or other, FY24 figures which have been notified, that I am not able to digest because 8.2 was the percent was the real GDP and nominal GDP was 9.6% as notified. Generally, the gap is never so low. It is always above 4%. Perhaps in due course, because this is an initial estimate, it will be corrected. Now, coming to the second point, due to sluggish investment from the private sector, government has done a good job by increasing the capex since last 4-5 years particularly. And as a result of which, though growth could be maintained, but the government fiscal debt has gone up. As on FY24, the central government debt alone is 169 trillion. And if we combine the state and central government both, it is approximately 254 trillion, something like 85 to 86% of GDP, whereas in the beginning of the decade, that is 2014, it was hardly 67%. So government has to, in the coming budgets, and some policy has to be framed that how the fiscal consolidation can be done. And why it is important? Because you see the interest rate for the center is around 7.1%. Average interest I'm talking. And for the state, it could be still higher. So what happens? The interest burden itself in the current budget, if you see, it is about 40% of the total revenue received. When I say total revenue, it includes non-tax revenue also. If you talk of only on the tax revenue, it might exceed 45%. So that means government is hardly left with any money. So some solution is to be found out for that purpose. My suggestion is first that repo rate government should take up with the RBI. The repo rate should be rolled back to 4% in the phases. Now, generally it is believed that interest is hiked to control the inflation. But you see, there cannot be a single medicine for all disease. We have to identify the regions and take the steps accordingly. In India, it is not a demand pull inflation. It is a cost push inflation. So by raising the interest, on the contrary, you are helping the inflation to go up. I firmly suggest with after analyzing data of 2 3 decades that interest hike is not going to do good for India in the long term. That is suggestion number one. And
So, sir, I'll come to you later, sir. I'll just have a
yeah,
first.
I'm not completed.
Yeah.
Let me complete it. Of course, this particular point. Of course, this is to be clubbed with the that personal loan which is given for consumption spending. That should be under check. It has gone up 28% of the gross bank credit. It should not be more than 15%. This is one suggestion for controlling the fiscal this thing. Another is little bit innovative. When the time permits you give me, then I'll say taking the benefit of the capital market, booming capital market, even some portion of the debt can be swapped with the equity. This is a little bit innovative. I have written the articles also on this thing, but that if your time permits, I can go ahead with that thing. Should I? What I'm
Sure, sir.
suggesting?
Yeah. I'll come to you later. I'll just take the opening comments first from everybody, given the
Okay.
paucity of time. All right.
Okay.
SP Sharma ji, how has the industry been reacting to this budget? CapEx has been largely on lines with what we saw in the interim budget. And Mr. Gupta, just talking about how the private investment has been sluggish. How do you see, this capex nudging private capex as well? And yesterday in the economic survey, how much of the government putting the onus on the private sector to create employment opportunities? Your thoughts, sir? You're on mute, sir. SP sir, you're on mute.
Yeah. So, firstly, at the outset, I thank you for inviting me and to present my connotations. Uh, I would like to mention that R.P. Gupta ji provided great insight about the statistics and the numbers of the budget, and I appreciate and I totally agree with him. But the tone of the budget is very right at this juncture because now economy needs demand creation. So I think this budget will create demand in the economy. A little bit employment focus is also given with the incentives and soaps provided to the manufacturing sector to provide the 1 month salary. So the focus of the budget remains same as it was set in the interim budget. Gyan, Garib, Yuva, Annadata, and Nari Shakti, and they have focused four more things in this budget, in the full budget. That is the employment, skilling, MSME, and the middle class. So this addition of four things will create the demand trajectory, and because the demand is needed at this juncture to grow, to support the growth, high growth trajectory in the country, because now the global growth or the global exports are decelerating and we'll not be able to do much on that front. So we need the support from the domestic sources of growth. That will be supported by all these things, the employment creating opportunities like the giving the 1 month salary or the other benefits, and the skilling of the population, and MSMEs particularly, they need handholding as ease of doing business is improved a lot from 142 to 63, but the ease of doing the business must happen in the factories, in the premises of the businesses. That will be the real ease of doing business in the country. So the government is focusing all these grassroots level and the basic parameters of the economic outlook and the economy going forward. So for their vision is very long actually. They have visioned the 2047, and now they are focusing the 9 pillars, starting from the productivity and resilience in the agriculture, employment and skilling, inclusive human resource development and social justice and manufacturing and services, urban development, energy security, infrastructure, innovation and R&D. So all these pillars are for the Amrit Kal to become the Viksit Bharat by 2047. And on the growth numbers, we are already in a good trajectory. We are going more than 8%. The average growth is more than 8% during the last 3 years, starting from 9.7% immediately after the coronavirus. And going forward, I think the growth will remain intact for the current year also and the coming years also, as projected by the IMF in their World Economic Outlook, that growth is very, very high as compared with many economies. Almost all the major economies we will be growing in the much, much higher trajectory as compared with China also. China is now significantly behind us. At least 2 percentage point is the growth lower as compared with India. So going forward, I think the drivers of growth are becoming robust, and government has really identified those drivers of growth. Agriculture is a major driver of growth in the country, because if the growth in agriculture comes, that creates the aggregate demand in the country. If you go by the numbers, during the last 5 6 years, agriculture sector was growing more than 3% in 17 18 18 19 19 20 21 22 22 23. But last year agriculture was growing at 1 because of the high base effect. So this growth trajectory of the agriculture sector, more than 3% growth of the agriculture sector, has provided a good momentum to the manufacturing, and we grew by 9.9% last year in the manufacturing. That happened after so many years. So going forward, I think the agriculture focus will provide a great support to the manufacturing, to the services, and overall growth trajectory of the country. And government has rightly touched all these grassroots level growth parameters and the growth drivers of the economy going forward.
Absolutely. Very rightly put, sir. The four big themes which were right 5 minutes into the budget, which were very clearly delineated, be it the employment, skilling, MSMEs, and the middle class. Of course, middle class by and large has not been happy. I'll come to Naveen and Gunjan separately on that aspect as well. But Rohit, your quick thoughts on these four themes. Where do you think has there been the most concrete steps taken which has set the tone for progressive path among these four themes?
See, for me, because I come from startup background, so for me the biggest takeaway is abolition of angel tax. That's the big thing. Of course, eligibility criteria for tax holiday is also kind of changed, and ultimately will benefit to startup. Capitalization of startup is very important because they can ultimately kind of spend and create job opportunity. So investors who are sitting in fence actually ultimately after this angel tax fear went away, they can kind of come and invest, and that will ultimately give kind of lot of impetus to the startups. Now the second important thing is the credit flow in MSME, because MSME contribute almost around 30% to GDP and 45% to export actually. The credit flow will ultimately empower them to kind of because that is something actually which can hinder their development, and the credit guarantee scheme and credit flow, easy credit flow to MSME will help. Third thing is skill development, because ultimately, if as a startup actually, we also hire people. Sometimes it is very difficult to get the people with the right skill when we kind of start kind of hiring large number of people actually. Skill development at all level is something is very important. Government, a perpetual focus on skill development is something actually is very impressive, and they have financial allocation also and resource allocation also with respect to skill development. And the most important thing is again kind of a bottom-up approach where they are allocating a lot of fund towards women empowerment. So these are 3-4 important kind of takeaway for me, because if buying immediate $5 trillion economy compared to our potential, but of course we have some benchmark or milestone to achieve. These are the important thing. Of course there are a larger picture to look into. As a startup, actually, we were definitely hoping for some more incentivization for job creation and easy exit to kind of list on stock exchange and other thing actually. But of course, not all can come together actually. So yes, it's a balance. Yeah.
Right. Maninder, your quick thoughts before I go to Gunjan and Naveen in detail on taxation related provisions in this budget. You actually come from the renewable energy sector as well. So tell us about what have been some of your takeaways on the provisions of energy security. Nuclear finds a mention this time. Pumped hydro storage is there. We have BCDs removed from solar sector. Your thoughts on it? Yeah, Maninder.
Hello. Yeah. I'm sorry, actually, I had lost you in between. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
see,
Yeah.
talking about renewable energy sector in the country, one very big push we were expecting from the government in the
I think he's having shoddy internet connection. Till then, I think, Naveen, we can start with you. I was talking about the middle class. Many of them have described this as disastrous one, given how they've taxed long-term capital gains, short-term capital gains taxes, STTs. Uh, your quick thoughts on it? I mean, this seems to be building for months. The economic survey yesterday highlighting against speculation and warning of financialization of Indian markets. So, Naveen, how do you read this?
Yes, so when we talk about this part of taxation, which is long-term as well as short-term capital gains, so we are primarily referring to what is going to happen for the capital markets as such, right? So from an equity markets perspective, I would say that this budget is a mixed budget, primarily because the aspects which are slightly negative in the short run are the increase in long-term capital gains tax. So one is 10 to 12.5%. You can say that the long-term capital gains tax incidence has increased by almost 25%. And the short-term capital gains tax also increased from 15. Long-term returns that the investors might only when you make profit, right? And also the profit limit has been raised from 1 lakh to 1 lakh, right? So some bit of respite has been provided on that front. So I would say that it is marginal negative, but not a very, very significant negative, right? Apart from this, in the overall context, if I were to look at it, the fiscal deficit number from which was projected at 5.1% in the interim budget has been now reduced to 4.9%, right? So which is essentially positive from the yields perspective, right? So overall, that is a long-term positive again, because the fiscal consolidation power which the government is on, I think that continues to remain. The budget continues to remain a prudent budget in that sense. Also, the other aspects which are to increase demand, create employment, these are all long-term positives. So I would say that there was a knee-jerk reaction in the market when there was initial setup, and thereafter we've seen some bit of recovery also in the market, because the increase in taxation and increase in incidence is not extremely high. But there are other positives which the government continues to maintain, which is fiscal prudence, capex driven growth, and also the focus now on employment and spurring consumption. These are all the long-term positives which we are seeing at this point.
Thank you, Naveen. Maninder, I lost you when you were talking. I hope the internet is better now. You can continue.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was talking about biofuel sector, specifically in the renewable energy context. Now, in our country, biofuels had to be given a push because it is directly related to waste management and agri-residue management in the country. But somehow we did not see any such push, which was expected from the government. So I would say that is something which the whole industry was expecting, and we did not see it through. So talking about renewable energy, that was one front which I wanted to list out. Apart from that, I also wanted to raise the problem area in skill development and education sector, since I am chairing the council for that at ASSOCHAM. See, when we did education, when we failed in education system, we launched the skill development ecosystem. And we have to use a lot of our existing infrastructure to renovate it into better use. But what we saw in this budget, of course, 20 lakh trainings being funded by the government looks very realistic. But on the impact side of it, we are far, far away from getting to where we wanted to, because polytechnics and ITIs have been able to give only 25 to 35% employmentability, whereas degrees have still conferred around 50 to 60% of employmentability in our country. What does that mean? That means that skill development in specific sectors needed to be pushed. So if you are just renovating the old schemes and not actually pushing the skill development specifically for new areas and allotted places, it is not going to result in that kind of a framework. So a lot of skill development push was expected in agriculture field especially. We did not see it. a lot of skill development push was also expected toward entrepreneurship in the entire new budget. We can say that, okay, the budget was good, above average, but there is no incentivization for success of entrepreneurs. So that is something which really needs to be done in our country to, for us to create new jobs. Because as you see very clearly in this budget, that the job creation is something which is shifting largely from government to private sector.
Right. And that is something that we saw in the very clearly highlighted in the economic survey yesterday as well. Gunjan, I mean, really, your designation tells me indirect taxation is your field, but I'm sure
Yes.
you can give us some insights on the new income tax slab, the changes in the slabs today, or some on the aspects of standard deduction, and of course, the
Sure.
capital market taxation as well.
Yeah, no, so thanks to Naveen, he actually aptly covered the long-term and the short-term taxes implications very succinctly. And more importantly, coming back to the key takeaway, Arjun, that you talked about.
Yeah.
And Mr. S.P. Sharma is absolutely right. And somewhere I agree with him, because we've been seeing, especially since introduction of GST, how the law has been evolving, what measures the government has been taking. The approach may be slow and steady, but if we have focused on what the government is trying to do is to overhaul what we have, and that includes even scrapping something which is not workable. The key takeaway today has been tax simplification. So the finance minister clearly said that there needs to be a complete overview of the Income Tax Act 1961 to see what are the changes that are required to be made, not just in the rates, but to see what is not working well for the industry at large. Also to see how we can reduce litigation, right? It's a very old law and definitely needs to be looked at in the light of or the scheme of things, what we are doing today. Likewise, so many changes that we have witnessed today from a customs duty standpoint, right? Again, the focus was GST was such a monumental change. So many changes have been made. So many changes are continued to be made. And in fact, honestly, we were not expecting too many changes from an indirect tax standpoint, because as all of us are aware, GST Council meetings play a very important role. And especially the last one, the 53rd one, we had almost 4 notifications, 23 circulars, and enough and more announcements to, which were favorable, in fact, to the industry. So, of course, steps are being taken. Some are complicating the life of the industry, some are not. And clearly, the theme continues to be tax simplification. And for any country to be a developed country, ease of doing business is the core. And ease of doing business cannot happen until and unless we simplify the taxes.
Right. Very rightly put, Gunjan. I have just 5 minutes left. I'll just come to each one of you for a quick roundup. RP Gupta ji, I'll start up with you. What is that one thing probably that you think was missing today, and something that you may expect in, let's say, the February budget or the upcoming budgets later in the term of this government?
You see, jobs, as Mr. Maninder Singh was telling about the skill and all that, what we are missing is, from the beginning, there is no survey has been conducted. As an employer, I am telling that what type of jobs country needs and what will be the requirement for next 5 years. So even the education, students are selecting the careers. When I did engineering in 1971, engineers were in shortage. Today they are in surplus. So likewise, the situation changes. So government should do a regular survey, number one, to predict for the selection of the career. Number two, that every course must be essentially clubbed with 6 months to 12 months practical training, as being done in the medical profession, partly in the engineering profession also. Unless that is done, you see the unemployment. If you see among the educated, the unemployment rate is higher, whereas among non-matriculate, the unemployment rate is poor, low. So what we are going to conclude, and accordingly, the educational curriculum has to also change. That is one. Number two, Gunjan was telling about GST. See, MSME, everybody will agree that they are the large job providers. keep aside medium scale. I'm talking of the micro and small. Earlier, micro and small manufacturing units, they were getting about 22.5 lakhs per annum excise benefits. 1.5 lakh crores turnover, say 15% excise. After GST introduction, that benefit has been practically not available to them. They are not able to compete with the large units. I strongly feel in my state, I belong to Odisha. Government of Odisha has come up a policy that net GST payable after availment of the input tax credit, it will be exempted up to certain amount. But
Right.
those are for the new units only. If it is done for existing and new units, particularly I am restricting micro and small up to certain amount, then I am telling you this sector will revive. They are the largest job provider, maybe of low and middle income. By skilling and whatever you are telling, those are high income jobs. What country needs is bottom portion.
Right.
At least they must get the job. This is what my submission. And in the brief, I will say about the innovative things in 2 lines. I will try to complete that. Instead of directly spending from the government budget, let it be done by the PSUs, and all profitable PSUs should be converted to a listed corporate, just like as it has been done in the LIC, and let them investment burden take by them. Government should only give interim support for the budget, equity and all that.
Right.
And they came from the market true bond, because recently JP Morgan index में अपना include हो चुका है. So it will be very
Right.
easy for them. So unless you have a long-term thought, year-to-year economy has to be seen for a long-term view, not for year-to-year basis. That is what my submission.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Just 2 minutes left. SP Sharma, sir. 20 seconds. I know the wish list never ends, but something that you see today, have the government on one particular aspect laid the foundation and you want it to gradually develop over the years?
Yes, yes. I think Honorable Minister has missed the three major things. Firstly, the long-term view on the corporate tax, which is now 23%, 22% and 15%, 22% for the old ones and 15% for the newest. So there must be a long-term viewpoint, long-term policy making for such kind of taxes, because manufacturing sector is not that much robust right now, contributing only 16%. And our vision is to make it 25% of the GDP. So that will happen only if there is a long-term policy perspective. So people are uncertain whether this relief in the taxes will continue beyond 24-25, or they will be getting back this relief provided to the industry. So that is unclear. And second is the PLI. Madam has not discussed the PLI scheme, because PLI is giving a great momentum to the manufacturing and exports also. We have observed the ever high export trajectory in the manufacturing sector. So we had requested so many sectors to be added in the PLI scheme, particularly the labor intensive MSME sectors, to be to create employment opportunities and to become more and more resilient in the Indian economy. But they have not discussed anything about the PLI. And third, as Gunjan mentioned, that GST is a major, though that is a great reform, but that is also still sometimes a problematic tax for some players, some small players, some MSMEs. So they have not discussed. In the 90-minute speech, they only provided the 96 seconds to the GST discussion, that this is a very good tax and this is successfully implemented. So there should have some more focus on the developments in the GST. Like people are talking about their petroleum products and the all these things should come under the GST scenario to control the inflation trajectory. But there is no clear-cut direction about the when the petroleum products will come under the GST regime or not, or this is totally uncertain. So these 3-4 things are still in the uncertain trajectory. Though we are moving ahead, we are moving ahead with a high growth, and we will remain growth oriented. But these 3-4 things should be focused in the coming times. Yeah.
That's all the time I have. I'm sorry, my team is showing me the time's up. It was wonderful connecting with you, and I look forward to connecting with all of you later in future for our stories. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll hand it over to Kashish now, who will introduce the next panel.
Thank you, Arjun. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kashish Saxena, and I'll be
Kashish, you are on mute.
I'm so sorry. Next up, we will dive into our second session, which is Financing India's Growth, Unpacking Opportunities. Our panel for this segment includes Dr. Sridharan, Policy Researcher and Corporate Advisor, Rituparna Chakravarti, Co-founder of Team Lease, Kunal Sangvi, Chief Strategy and Transformation Officer at HDFC Securities. Yet? I'm on mute. I'm unmuted. Am I audible, panel?
Yeah, you're audible.
Murli Malayappan, Chairman and Managing Director at Shriram Properties, Amardev Singh, SVP Research at Angel One, Gaurav Dua, SVP Head Capital Market Strategy at Sher Khan. This session will be moderated by Ashish Sinha, Senior Associate Editor at BW Businessworld. Over to you, Ashish.
Thank you, Kashish. Good evening and welcome to you all. It has been a hectic day. I can understand. Budgets are always like interesting for people who watch them, track them for their clients, investors, and for research purposes. So thank you for sparing the time. We'll keep it little snappy and fast, otherwise it becomes little monotonous. So can I just get quick round of like your top 3-4 comments that you would like to make? What is good? What is not so good? Can we start with Gaurav Duaji?
Yeah, so I think this budget would have called for a celebration from the equity market because it's a continuity of the existing policies in terms of focus on growth, higher allocation for infrastructure development, and this time they have also provided some softs to the middle class, agriculture, focus on the jobs. So overall, it was an excellent kind of a budget, only for the tinkering with the capital, capital gains tax, and also the hike that has come in terms of the STT for this options and futures. Market would have really this thing loved this kind of a budget. Yes, but I think the reaction to the negative news in terms of the changes in the taxations are going to be short-lived, and I think the focus will be back on the fundamentals, quarterly earnings, and the multi-year economic upcycle ahead for the Indian economy.
That's right. Well said, sir. Kunal Sangviji, if I can just get your reaction of why did the market react? I mean, even before the budget speech was over, it started going into the red and continued to be in red. Was it not expected? Because there were talks and buzz around that something will be done. So how do you explain that?
We are in a phase of a market where there is enough and more amount of wealth that is created by investors, and if investors start booking profits on that, there will be capital gains on it. So at any time when there is an actual announcement of an increase in capital gains, we will see markets reacting to it. But the welcome move was that you immediately saw that it's recovered from whatever lows it was, and again the lows were not as great, and it didn't really go down as much as we would have seen as if it's a bad news, so to say. Let's look at it more constructively. Government has to take the taxes from where the gains are made so that there is a minimal pinch, and at the same time there is a reallocation of deployment of funds in the areas which are required by the economy. So obviously capital markets, as you are aware, has made money. The investors have made money in last 2 years, and definitely there is going to be significant amount of rise in the gains that are going to happen. So I believe that's a right tax move. Obviously, capital markets will take it with a pinch of salt because there'll be a little bit of more outflow. Also look at it from the perspective of reducing capital gains in unlisted securities, which has also started to turn out to be a significant segment, so to say, and also simplification of the overall capital gains, because it's all clubbed into now 12 months and 24 months across asset classes. So that is again a very, very welcome move. And in the long run, the impact will be much more simpler, gives scalability for investments in capital market, more so also from foreign investors as well. Again, if you see the STT that was increased was only in FNO segment, which will not impact the investor sentiment, and also at the same time it will curb the unnecessary speculation and morally moving away from the job creation speculative motives of youth. So I believe it's a very well measured move, welcome move. We may feel pain for a few hours, but it's good for the economy.
That's right. Murali sir, if I could get your reaction on this indexation thing going from real estate, does it make it attractive now for people to sell their houses, old houses? How because they'll have to pay a heck lot of a taxation on that.
See, thank you first of all, and see, the budget has to be looked into overall scheme of things, not just what is going to happen in the stock market today or the next 1 week time. And market gets adjusted very fast. You asked the right question even before they presenting the budget. Why the market fell down? I want to answer to it, and market adjusts, comes back again. So overall economy is doing good. So government has tried to balance societal challenges with economic growth. If you look at the way they have, structured, see, Northeast has been ignored for a long period of time. And some of the states in the overall country is not doing good. So they try to address some of the states, weaker states, where there is a growth potential to be addressed. And also some of the areas, northeastern states, unless those things are addressed. And south, again, people have different view on supporting Andhra. In the entire south, Andhra is the weakest link today. Otherwise, south contributes close to about 35-37% of GDP. If that state also pulled up, I think overall country's economy will do well. Overall economic growth has been good, and I welcome the budget on few aspects. One is the emphasis on infrastructure support. It's a big support on infrastructure, and digitization of land records, which has been the demand for a longer period of time for anybody to do business, which is a very, very positive one that some beginning started. Third is about 10 lakh crore on middle class housing, particularly on urban areas. All that is going to push the further demand on the housing, and as well as infra growth, which is going to push the demand further. We are extremely bullish. Next 5 years, it is going to be very, very positive for infra, real estate, housing. Hence, the economy also will be doing good. These three contribute close to about 50% to the GDP. So, hence, economy will move in the right direction, is my view.
Welcome, Srinathji. Just wanted your quick take on this impact on markets, how markets reacted, because before you joined, we were discussing this, that even before the speech was over, market started going into the red. A lot of stocks we could see just going into the red. How do you, if you could briefly sum up what are the quick takeaways, short term and long term, considering that we are sitting in July, once the budget is passed and fully implemented, there will be about just 6 months effectively. And finance minister gets into preparation of the next budget. So your take quickly on the.
I think one question.
Sure.
Did you have any insight before the budget was presented? Because you had come with the red jacket.
Just wanted to transform the mood of the market.
Sorry. Go ahead.
If Ashish were able to just wear different colors and change the
Srinath, your audio is going and coming. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now.
The reality, Ashish, is structurally this is announced. I think it's a political budget. Very clearly, few focus states announced. Two, I think, about youth, women empowerment. For example, all the announcements around skilling initiatives, internships, into that. Uh, but none of them spoken about of how it will be operational.
Srinathji, I think you'll have to re-log in because your voice is totally like spliced up. One word is visible, one word is not visible. So I'll quickly go to Rituparna and Amar for their reaction. Rituparna, you must be happy with so much of emphasis on skill development, training the youth. Though this government, I remember on the Independence Day speech in 2015, Stand Up India, Startup India was talked about, Skill India was talked about. 11 years later, Prime Minister in his bite to the ANI again talks about skilling. I want entrepreneur in every home. How do you guys see the skill market and availability of skilled resources across sectors?
Ashish, I am the odd woman out clearly. I'm sitting amidst experts in the financial markets. So, but I'm going to talk about from where I sit, how I view the budget. I mean, I have never seen such extraordinary amount of budget allocation called out for job creation, for skilling, women-specific initiatives. So it definitely sounds good. It creates hope. I think the three-tiered scheme, the what is that? Employment linked
Incentive scheme.
incentives that have been created is quite interesting and quite unique. It's trying to encourage first-time formal employment, by the way, and trying to create incentives against informal employment, which honestly is much more attractive in India than formal. It's also trying to provide some incentive for employers to kind of directly hire people, keep them. It's also trying to create incentive for manufacturing. Interestingly, I feel that this budget and the announcement is very much taken into consideration some of the shocking revelations which were made by the Economic Survey report, which was released yesterday, and which clearly talks about the fact that employment generation has slowed down, wage escalation has slowed down, the fact that 1 out of 2 are unemployable in youth in India. So I think there is definitely some constructive moves which I see panning out. The amount that has been put aside for internships and an apprenticeship, the 3 lakh crores for women. But I guess somewhere my concerns are definitely going to be around awareness, around implementation, around accessibility that will be created to all the funds that we're talking about, and these are large numbers. I'm also concerned in terms of the longevity or the long-term effects of some of the employment-linked incentives that have been announced. It should not be that a lot of money being spent and quick buck is being made for 4 years or for 3 months and so on and so forth, and we are back to square one. The transparency of the whole mechanism, honestly, is something that we'll have to watch out for. 3 lakh crores for women-linked incentives. I don't know whether in the global scenario any country has announced such a large outlay, but it will be very necessary to kind of have a quarterly, if not quarterly, an annual dashboard to see whether progress is being made. For example, EPFO data is published every month. The gender-specific data never gets published. So the first and immediate way to kind of see an assessment of some of this would be that. Overarchingly, obviously, there's a large spend which is being made on infrastructure, or large number of allocation has been made. I mean, that 11111 figure is astonishingly large. There's a large amount of spend I'm talking about, or emphasis on rural inclusion, because you're trying to create or ensure that we are reaching out to some 25,000 odd rural hubs and whatever that might be, which are all good things. I also think which stood out for me is the fact that there is an emphasis on promoting financial literacy. Even the employment-linked incentives, one of the clauses saying that the employee has to undergo financial literacy. And I honestly feel that if you were to make India a larger market, a larger economy, financial inclusion is going to be key. The outlays which are being promised on improving the digital public infrastructure is heartening. But you know what? A lot of good things in the budget all across, but it's just so good to be true that my concerns will definitely be on implementation, the transparency with which these funds are allocated and utilized, um, whether and when there is accountability on some of the promised infrastructural rollouts that have been mentioned. MSME has got a lot of notice, so essentially is also encouraging. Hopefully, that will provide some employment. I look at it very simplistically. Why? I know this is a conversation on how markets are improving and the financial emphasis or impact, but I look at it simplistically. If you're going to put more money in the hands of people, the purchasing power of this country goes up, the overall purchasing power, which is right now quite pathetic. And that itself circles back into kind of improving the economic prospects of the country. So if the execution happens based on the intent of the budget, it's for me, I'll take it, and it's optimistic. But honestly, where the rubber meets the road is execution and implementation.
Yeah, well said, Vikas. Amarji, sorry, I'm coming to you last, but how do you see this translate into this non-market related investment instruments? Where do you see people's interest now in investing in gold, real estate, metals, considering what the impact, I mean, what will be the impact on futures and options, the marginal hike of rate? How do you assess the impact side of announcements for our viewers?
Yeah. Thank you, Ashish, for having me. Someone has to come last, so that's fine. If you look at the markets behave in mysterious ways. And if you look at different asset classes, we've seen some phenomenal and spectacular rally in the Indian equities markets, where the returns have been, I would say, if you look at many of the stocks, there have been multi-baggers across sectors, across, I would say, earlier PSU stocks were looked at not that great, but they've really performed exceedingly well. So it all depends upon as to the risk appetite of the investors, because that's something which is very important. And also the holding period, as to what exactly is the holding period one looking at. Because if you look at the markets from a long-term perspective, I would say maybe a 10-year, 20-year perspective, 30-year, you'll find that markets are cyclical in nature. So it's just like you have day and then you have night. So markets also have a bull phase, then you have consolidation, you have a bear phase across sectors, across economies, across markets. That happens. But if you look at it from a long-term perspective, when you are capturing the entire cycle, then you are emerging, because as one of the eminent panelists earlier spoke about, that we being in a growth trajectory and we being in a long-term secular bull market as a economy as well. So having said that, one would also have to look at as to the risk profiling or the risk appetite, because the risk appetite would vary from individual to individual. Also the investing capacity, that also is there. But if one were to look at the CAGR of Nifty or for the benchmark indices of the last 2 decades, that's 14-15%, which is really good if you look at from a long-term perspective for wealth creation. Then you got earlier there were not very different types of instruments. Now you've got ETFs, you've got thematic funds, you've got the mutual funds. In mutual funds, you've got different sectoral funds, and you've got multi-cap funds also, if you're not willing to take too much of risk, because small caps, if you look at small caps, mid caps, they perform far better as compared to large caps, but when the fall is also faster. So there the risk is also higher. So, but now, as of today, if you look at today and compare it to 10 years back, the type of instruments which are available, they suit different types of investors based on their risk profile. That's one. But having said that, gold is, I would say, an asset class one should definitely, that should be part of anyone's asset. Maybe around 8 to 10% allocation of the total portfolio should be in gold, because gold is something which you can say is a hedge against inflation. It is something which value, because we've seen the stocks, I won't name the stocks, but we've seen stocks collapse like 9 pins when the COVID happened, and then we've seen them becoming multi-baggers. So we never know what future has in store for us in terms of events I'm talking about. Yes, on a growth trajectory, definitely we are there. So those who are looking from a long-term investing, they have the option of going in for SIPs. They have an option of going in for quarterly SIPs. It doesn't have to be necessarily monthly SIP, but capturing the up move and the down move becomes very important from a long-term perspective, from a compounding perspective, from a growth perspective. Gold as an asset class definitely is should be part of it. Coming to real estate as an asset class, if you ask me, the returns basically twofold. You have either capital appreciation in terms of price appreciation. Secondly, you have in terms of rental. So where there is price appreciation, there definitely real estate makes a good sense, because but there again you have to look at the liquidity. Meaning, if you want to dispose of, then how does that happen? So is that comparatively liquid? That's one. And secondly, you also, if you're looking at investment in real estate, then you'll also have to look at those areas, or move out of those areas which are close to the peak. Now, defining or seeing that this is a peak is also not easy, which we are seeing in cities, be it New York, be it Tokyo, be it Mumbai, anywhere, or I would say other cities. But still, there is a capacity to the buying power, and there is also a price which even a billionaire would think twice for paying, or a multimillionaire. So, having said that, real estate is definitely a good investment opportunity for those who are looking at in some places. But again, there it becomes that whether you buy in a complex, in a society, or is it a land parcel. Managing the land parcel again could be an issue. So there are certain challenges. But yes, that also is an option. But rental income, just for investing in real estate for rental income, that wouldn't make much of a sense.
Okay. Gaurav ji and Kunal, and I'll come to Murli ji then. This government's push or encouragement for people, salaried people, to move towards this new tax regime by giving more incentives and all. How do you see it when you juxtapose it to the older scheme where there was encouragement to invest money in PPF? There were different things which you could do and forcefully save. How does it help for somebody who's a youth who is educated and now coming into workforce or has started working in last couple of years? How do you see that as an opportunity, or your take on that, Gaurav ji and then Kunal ji?
Because of the older tax listing regime, a lot of investments used to be made just to save tax and not as an investment. So a lot of basically insurance which were linked to equity were not very efficient products, but a lot of people used to invest in them just to save tax, and the cost there used to be pretty high, and it is still high compared to a lot of other products. So I mean, coming into the new tax this thing regime is that when you invest, you keep your basically financial goals in mind rather than invest keeping the tax incentive in mind. That is the right way to invest. Now, even if you look at from the government side, okay, if you are taking money in these small saving schemes like Public Provident Fund, NSC, and all those kind of products, you end up paying 8.5% kind of a interest rate, whereas the government bond yields stand at now around 7% or even lower. And with the inclusion in the global this bond index, these bond yields are likely to come down further. So this also has a positive impact on the cost of borrowing for the government of India. So I think that's the right way ahead. What I think is, when you talk about these fiscal math, I think this government has done a very, very good job. Okay, they have a very strong kind of an allocation for infrastructure spending, social schemes. On the other hand, they are trying to manage this deficit level to 4.9 this thing percent. So that is where you cannot fault this this government. And Secondly, I don't know if there's something which has to be highlighted, that they have contained the revenue expenditure in a 4 to 8% range for a long time now. What has actually that done is that the quality of expenditure or quality of spending by government of India in last 8 years have improved substantially. So the capital outlay or the capital expenditure as part of the total revenue expenditure has gone up from a range of 16 to 18% to now around 30 to 30.5%. That means now 30% of the government expenditure is used for the development, okay, productive expenditure rather than the wasteful recurring expenditure. So that's where I think the government has done a very amazing job. And if you see, the whole policy framework is moving in that kind of a this thing direction, where every saving or the expenditure, be at the government level or at the small investor or a common man this thing level, is diverted or incentivized towards productive saving and productive spending.
Kunalji, since we are running out of time, if you could keep your response short, I'm sorry we are only hard. And then I have one or two questions to Murli ji. And meanwhile, all of you, if you can think of out of 10, how much points would you like to give for this full budget in a special year, a general election year? I'll just quickly take it out at the end. So Kunalji, what do you?
Yeah. So in general, if you see, the overall direct tax collections is close to 22 lakh crores.
Yeah.
And it is estimated to go to 25 lakh crores in this particular fiscal as per budget. Now, and of this, personal income tax is close to about 11 lakh crores. So it's a very significant component of the overall thing, and the behaviors that government wishes to induct in individuals in terms of savings, in terms of long-term objectives, is directed by the deductions that are provided in this particular thing. As we see that these deductions and this savings behavior and the culture to be created has been there for a while in the income tax, which is leading to already these cultures and behavior being created in individuals. Going forward, they need to induct new behaviors into people because some of these have already been created. As a result, new tax regime, to your question, and constantly government is slowly pushing towards not necessarily getting into that behavior, because now people have enough and more avenues to invest, and they can directly decide on their own where to invest, including equity capital markets, where we are seeing very robust flows. As you must have seen, the demat accounts have gone many-fold to 160 million already across the industry.
Sure.
So all of that is happening, and therefore government is pushing to new tax regime. Probably we can look at other questions. Yeah.
Okay. Murli ji, Finance Minister very briefly made a sentence on stamp duty and left it to the states that I request that it should be looked into and lowered. How do you look at it in context of where you do business? How is the stamp duty structure? Is it high, low? And do you see that further rationalization is required to boost up the salaried class people, especially 28 to 35, 37 years of age, who are interested in buying their house, but look at all the cost benefit analysis, taxation, etc., and then they hesitate. Like she also talked about women registering homes or something will get incentives. How do you look at it briefly?
Absolutely. This is an exact point where the government is going in the right direction, or the budget is setting the right direction. We need to look at how is the federal arrangement.
Yeah.
So states have quite a lot of control, and central has few areas they have control.
Yeah.
For example, we all talk about complaint about corruption, and government of India has been pushing quite a lot on eliminating corruption, particularly on real estate. They came out with about 3 years ago a formula for giving approvals online.
Yes.
Most of the state governments resisted. Now, if you take the stamp duty, is a state subject.
Yeah.
So, whereas digitization of record, again there is a state subject, but government of India is pushing through now digitization of records. I'm sure this is the beginning. Next 2 to 3 years time will be very successful. Once the digitization of records is complete, you will see the industry growth in a very, very different pace altogether. Now, again, central government can only make a request or persuade state governments to reduce the stamp duty. It is the responsibility of state governments also to push up in order to get their own, state economies to do well. So I'm sure they will do it. A lot of state governments are doing, for example, West Bengal, very proactively they have been addressing on reducing the stamp duty constantly. Quite a lot of state governments have been working on that now, but it's a state and central government. It's like it's not the captain can win the match. All the 11
taxation of liquor and real estate is very attractive for state government. They don't want to let go of thing. They think it very short term. They don't see that if we do encouragement step, maybe if 100 houses are getting registered, maybe 150 houses will start getting registered.
Absolutely. So out of the cricket team, all the 11 have to play to win the match. Here, 29 states have to play. State government, I'm sure some of the state governments are very, very responsible behavior. Some of them are not yet, but I'm sure everyone will pull up at some stage. And that's very important one. The other one is, again, you rightly said, women led, again, where Quran was talking about how, government is pushing people towards saving economy. So, and these are all very, very important things. See, house is a decision made by a woman. And if you give the security, additional security to the woman by giving some concession, it will only increase the confidence with which people do business, or confidence with the people, can live in this country in a very, very comfortable position. So budget is in a very right direction overall. But now the state governments also have to play a role in making sure that their own state, in their own interest, their own state is doing well. I'm sure they will do a good job.
So, what is your score would you like to give out of 10?
8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. Rituparna?
I think I'll go with 7 out of 10.
Okay. Kunalji?
I would go with 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. Okay. Gauravji?
I'll give it a 9.
Oh, wow. Amarji, aap bhi?
Yeah, I will give between 8 and 9.
Oh.
In fact,
everybody involved with market directly or indirectly is happy.
In spite of long-term capital gains and capital gains.
Thank you very much, sir. We are just running out of, we have run out of time. In fact, other panelists are just logging in to see who are these people and what are they talking. Let me hand it back over to my colleague. Thank you, sir. Gauravji, Amarji. We'll remain connected, Murliji. Thank you for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.
A very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the panel discussion. Our next session of panel discussion is on Budget 2024 and the consumer economy, where we'll be discussing the budget's impact on consumer spending and industry dynamics. Joining us are Rajkumar Jain, Managing Director at Bonjour, Nirja Shagu Swami, CEO of Vikas India, Mini Sood Banerjee, Assistant Director and Head Marketing at Amur Pacific Group, Rajesh Agrawal, Managing Director at Insecticides India. This discussion will be moderated by Tarannum Manchul, Assistant Editor at BW Businessworld. Over to you, Tarannum.
Okay.
Please start, Tarannum, it's live.
Yeah, sure. Thank you everyone for joining. First of all, good evening and welcome to Budget with BW. Since afternoon we are discussing the Union Budget 2024, and right now we'll be discussing the implications of the budget and the implications of the budget on the consumer economy. As we dive into this critical topic, it is essential to recognize India's position in the global stage in terms of consumer economy. With a population of over 1.4 billion people, India is world's largest consumer market. The decisions, the announcements made in this year's budget will definitely have a far-fetched effect on the purchasing power of the people in India. From urban centers to rural heartlands, the ripple effects of the fiscal policies will shape the economic landscape of the country and the consumer behavior. Today, for this discussion, we have industry experts with us who will explore how the budget addresses the needs and the aspirations of India's diverse consumer base. I will now introduce our panelists, our distinguished panelists. We have with us Mr. Rajkumar Jain, the Managing Director, Bonjour International. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Tanvi.
Ms. Nija Shah Goswami, CEO of Vikas India. Welcome, ma'am.
Hello.
Mr. Simranjeet Singh, Director, CYK Hospitalities. I think he still hasn't joined in. Ms. Mini Sood Banerjee, Assistant Director and Head of Marketing, Amor Pacific Group. Hello, ma'am.
Hi everyone.
And Mr. Rajesh Agarwal, Managing Director, Insecticides India. And I am Tarannum Manjur, Assistant Editor at BW Businessworld. So now just delving into the discussion, in fact, my first question would be to all the panelists around, in fact, how has the union budget addressed inflation and its impact on the purchasing power of the consumers? Starting with you, Mr. Jain.
Thank you, Tarunji. In fact, over the years, the budgets prepared and this budget has really, impacted, though it has given small reliefs to various sectors, particularly for the middle class. The income tax slabs from 3 to 5 lakhs, 3 to 7 lakhs with the nil taxation and 30% taxation over 15 lakhs. And on the investment on the agriculture side, development of new biotechnology centers and the skill development, the special incentives on the new startups will definitely increase the employment and the disposable income because of the agricultural yield. The promotion of the natural agriculture will definitely, give more money in the hands of people. And once more money is coming in, the spending economy, consumerism will definitely increase in the country. And I'm sure this is going to create a lot of impact. Though, if you look at the budget, all the things have been touched upon. The money has been taken out from the long-term capital gains, and gold has been reduced. The duties on the imports on the gold has reduced so that more people can be able to buy gold at various places and the other things. So I'm quite positive that this year particularly, we should see more consumerism and more buying trends. So ultimately, consumer will become the king. This is my point of view.
Definitely, sir, with the budget this year, it does seem that consumer will become a king. Coming to you, Ms. Sood, with the same question, how do you think that the union budget will, impact the purchasing power of the consumers?
Well, I think, it definitely will be very impactful. First of all, also, I think that there is, adjusting the tax rates, like this, reducing maybe the indirect taxes like GST or essential commodities, kind of that, because reducing the inflation altogether, you're doing that, right? I think, that will make definitely a lot of impact. Then obviously, I feel that what Mr. Rajesh, I think, who also said before me, the social welfare programs, I think he mentioned, the social security programs and all, and even the public distribution system, I feel. So that will, if, strengthening and expanding that can ensure the essential commodities are available, at subsidized rate for the poor. So that will be definitely, very impactful. And lastly, I would like to say is the incentives for the social, social basically this, yeah, small businesses, I feel, SMEs and all medium enterprises, providing incentives to these industries, or maybe, can boost production and the supply for these small business, I feel. So I think, I think Mr. Rajkumar had mentioned, I had incorrectly named Rajesh. Yeah, sorry on that part. Yeah, I think these
No
3
worries.
points would be my main.
Thank you, Ms. Sood. And in fact, coming to Ms. Goswami now. Ms. Goswami, if you must have seen the union budget, it does talk a lot about MSMEs and startups and small businesses. What do you think that this would have an impact, or how would this have an impact on the consumers in terms of availability of product pricing and product availability?
I think the budget has really taken care of a lot of segments, especially India being such a big startup, having such a big startup ecosystem. They have taken care of the MSME segment, and particularly in manufacturing. They have increased, facilities of credit, etc., for the MSMEs, which will indirectly impact all the FMCG players. Also, by increasing, the cap for the taxation from 50 to 75, I think the availability of funds in the hand of a consumer is also going to indirectly impact the FMCG segment. The consumer is going to hopefully spend more. And other than that, I feel the budget has covered a lot of other things which I like to highlight, like the women empowerment, giving a lot of, things in the hands of the women. If you want to buy a property, you are given an extra exemption. And if you are getting into business, you are already getting loans, etc. I think the budget has really taken care of a lot of pressing issues that will impact the consumer economy indirectly.
Thank you, Ms. Goswami. That was a very valid point. In fact, talking about consumer economy. Coming to Mr. Rajesh Agarwal now. Mr. Agarwal, over the few years, we have seen a rise in rural consumerism. In fact, the rural consumer has become very, very significant, and the budget does target him as well in terms of agriculture and all that, all the entire sector. What is your viewpoint on this?
Yeah, it's a very interesting budget, basically, with a very positive outlook, because the type of investment which is going into infrastructure development, particularly the rural infrastructure, and for the farmer is taken care, the solar systems, the irrigation systems, the flood control measures. So all this is going to boost the rural economy in particular. And the way the taxation is given some relaxation, okay, at mid-level. So overall, everything points towards that more cash will be available, the opportunity will be more. And if we talk about rural India, then rural India, the major dependence is on agriculture. And when there is a commitment from the government, the commodity prices will be fixed, or the agriculture commodity prices will be fixed and increased, which means again a very positive signal, because they will have more cash in their hand. And today the demand from the rural consumer is very high for any sector, and they are the real consumers if we compare to city, because hardly 15% of people are in the city and masses are in the villages. So I take it as very, very positive, and there is a big opportunity actually in front of the country if these things are implemented, though it's a difficult target. But yes, at the same time, the effort to create jobs for the youngsters, because the first time employees, they are, again, the government is giving the relaxation to the industry for their appointment, and also some support to MSME. So all these are very positive moves. I should appreciate.
Thank you, Mr. Agarwal. In fact, I would like to come back to Mr. Rajkumar Jain now again. Mr. Jain, if you can just switch on your camera as well. Yeah, thank you, sir. Sir, I in fact wanted to ask you about, how far do you think the budget will actually, we have been talking so much about e-commerce and online retail, but how much do you think that the budget would actually help, the offline retail market and the penetration of offline retail?
Tarannum, I'm quite positive with not only this budget, but the stable government coming into the center. And because I have people from abroad who were very positive, they were waiting to see if this government repeats. With this government repeating, with this kind of budget happening, I'm quite positive that the spending, because people were a little scared before the elections. So now with all positivity coming back and stabilizing and the budget being on place, so people are going to come out this winter season, and the festive season is looking very, very positive. And I'm quite, you know, happy about it that the domestic government is pushing the domestic companies, the Indian startup, in front of the international companies, and Make in India will bring in lot of prosperity to the people's hands at large.
Thank you, sir. Coming to Ms. Mini Sood Banerjee now. Ms. Banerjee, if you look at the market and if you look at the budget, in fact, a lot has been, given to the women also. Even in the last interim budget, we saw that the Indian government is focusing a lot on, making women self-reliant and Atmanirbhar and employment opportunities and women entrepreneurship for that matter in India. How much do you think, in your opinion, how much do you think that the budget actually helps, women become much stronger consumers?
I think, since the budget, right, Ms. Nija Shah also mentioned, few points that women actually, has empowered, and you also mentioned. I think this definitely gives that empowerment feel, first of all, to women altogether. This gives them the courage to go ahead and do it. That, kind of that courage which was missing till now, maybe. Though I think for past few years, in fact, women has really done up well. We have seen women coming in all, stages of life. In fact, whether it's sports, whether it's the contest, whether it's beauty pageants and all that, we have seen that women has really, come up, way ahead as comparatively. And I think this boost which government is given to women, especially it will give them more boost, and it will, make them more independent, I feel. And in fact, there are many, single parent, as which single mothers who are handling, the kids and all. It gives them a lot of privilege, and it gives them very, strong bonding. In fact, that you can do it and go ahead, kind of. It's a big, big support, I feel, from the government point of view. And I think it will definitely do wonders for the women who really want to take this ahead. And, being myself as a woman, also being in the industry for past 16 years, I feel in fact, one saying to these women who are, there, that please go ahead. If you've got an opportunity, go ahead and take it. That would be one liner for me.
That was, in fact, a very wonderful one-liner, that if women get an opportunity, they should actually go ahead and take it. Coming to the other woman panelist out here, Ms. Nija Shah Goswami. Ms. Goswami, how do you think that the union budget, whatever you must have seen from the budget, actually aims to improve the access to the consumer access to various services in terms of the market, in terms of the retail market, for that matter?
I think mainly, like I said, it's the consumer having more power and the access, right? But I belong to an industry which largely depends on offline and both online. And I think the organized sector is the offline sector mostly. And for a smaller startup to get into, penetrate into the offline segment is equally difficult as, but the government giving all these opportunities and opening up the doors and giving us a little bit of leeway, or in terms of taxation or in terms of credit periods, gives us a little more power, little more, ability to, if I want to do production and if I'm getting a little bit of credit, I can take bigger steps. I can actually, like this year, my company has done 3,000 stores, and I'm aiming at 6,000 more stores. And we do face a lot of, because we are self-funded, we face a lot of funding issues. And if my manufacturer is getting, credits, and he is passing on that credits to me, I think, the whole cycle kind of goes on. And I feel, somewhere it impacts all of us. It impacts every FMCG player. It impacts all the entire startup ecosystem. One small change can do a lot, I think.
I would definitely agree on that, that one small change can, have a major impact. Coming to Mr. Rajesh Agarwal now. Mr. Agarwal, when we look at the rural consumerism, coming back again to that topic, and since you said that agriculture has, been given a lot of focus in the budget, do you think that the agricultural related consumerism will now increase with this budget giving a lot of SOPs, a lot of tax reforms and everything?
Definitely, the transportation, if it improves, the rural infrastructure improves, which means that the availability of vegetable, fruits, and all other perishable commodities become higher. And in place, it will give a big advantage to the farmer, who otherwise, if it takes time, then he is not able to reap the real benefit of these crops, actually, in particular, which are perishable. So the advantage should come to him, actually.
Definitely, sir. Thank you, in fact, for this one. Now, in fact, just winding up because we just have another 6 minutes to go. So my final question to, in fact, all the panelists here would be that what, according to you, will be the biggest impact of the budget of whatever the, whether it's related to infrastructure, whether it is related to taxes, what will be the biggest impact of the budget on the consumer economy and the consumer behavior in India? Starting off with Mr. Rajkumar Jain.
Tanu, what I've been listening and feeling is that the initiative or the intent of the government is to give money in the hands of everybody, equality. And once the money goes to the masses, and the way the internet has penetrated the rural area, the online buying has penetrated the rural area. The tier 2, tier 3 markets are the real markets growth avenues in the coming short time. And the budget is focusing to give money in the hands of the masses. So I'm quite positive that the
spending in the digital
money spending, the consumer will be coming out and spend money in offline and online markets both. There is humongous scope, as rightly Mrs. Sood has said, that once somebody comes out, the capacity, the one who will have the capacity will be the winner. And government is pushing the manufacturing capacity to a very, very fast pace. So I'm very, very positive about the years to come.
Thank you, sir. Coming to you, Ms. Banerjee, with the same question, what do you think would be the biggest impact of the budget on the consumer economy and the consumer behavior?
I feel that, right now India is high on digital. So the, consumers are after, COVID also, consumers have driven towards e-commerce and digital more. And, anywhere like people have gone to brick and mortar stores, the physical stores, but then also they are in such a habit that, they've become very, affluent, like just to be there and shop online. First of all, you get amenities that, even in Amazon, Zara, H&M, anything, all online platforms, Myntra, they have the, if they want to change, then you can change, their size and what all. There's a lot of benefits that the e-commerce platforms are giving to the consumers. Consumer behavior is also changing because they have so much of exposure, to maybe it's through web, maybe it's through the travel that they are doing. People are going abroad. There is the women are getting, disposable income has increased. Women have the expending power right now. They do not actually hesitate and they don't have to ask anyone because they're independent enough that they can spend on their own. So they, I feel digital, it is more towards digital. Consumer behavior is far more completely exposure with the web and, travel and all. So I think that is the way India is going through. So I would say it's through e-commerce and digital more, and this whole, budget will focus on that, I feel. And I think Mr. Modi also won because he is completely on social media.
Definitely. In fact, Ms. Banerjee, this is a very valid point you put across because we have a lot of researchers which have been saying that, even in rural areas, online consumerism is growing. Coming to Mr. Rajesh Agarwal with the same question that, sir, what do you think would be the biggest impact of this budget on consumer economy?
See, my view is like when you develop the infrastructure, the things get developed automatically. The way the e-commerce has started into the rural places because the internet is so cheap and it is accessible. Similarly, the roads have changed the lives of the rural areas. Your access to the village and the villagers' access to the cities, it has become easier and the movement of goods have become faster and easier. The emphasis which is being given on storages and everything, that has an impact. And the biggest thing, which we are not discussing much, is the jobs for the new people, where the government is giving the support to the companies for employing new people. So first time employees, you are getting the benefit for 2 years to 4 years, different schemes are there. So which means that more people are having jobs, that means that more disposable income and more the consumerism. So I believe that it's a very positive signal what is being given by reflected in the budget. And definitely the things are going to go positive and positive direction. So should be beneficial for the country.
Definitely. You just spoke about more purchasing power because of more job creations. Now coming to Ms. Goswami and then just concluding this webinar. Ms. Goswami, what is your opinion? How will the budget, create an impact on the consumer behavior and economy?
See, I believe the intent of the government is like the finance minister said, is to focus on the 4 pillars, that is the poor, the women, the youth, and the agricultural, the farmers basically. And empowering all 4 pillars is going to, in fact, empower the economy. And I feel also like Mr. Rajesh Agarwal said, the access that we are improving the access in terms of transportation, commutation, in terms of the access of cell phones and internet. The custom duties have decreased on the cell phones, etc., which means the access is going to increase, and which means the penetration of D2C. Right, the e-commerce is going to increase. So indirectly or directly, this is impacting the entire consumer economy. All the reforms are, I believe, with a good intent. What we are yet to see, and I am hoping to see a very good implementation of the same in all segments and sectors.
That was wonderful. In fact, we all are keeping our fingers crossed for that, whatever has been announced or declared in the budget, if it goes well that way, of course, we will see a much bigger consumer market and much more brands coming to India, of course, since India is one of the biggest consumer markets. In fact, that was a very wonderful discussion. All of our panelists had very amazing insights to share on the budget, looking at the perspective of the consumer and the consumer economy as well. So before just ending this webinar, I would like to thank all our panelists. Thank you, Mr. Rajkumar Jain, for joining us today, sir. Thank you, Mr. Rajesh Agarwal, for joining us. Thank you, Ms. Mini Sood Banerjee, for joining us. And thank you, Ms. Neeja Shah Goswami. It was wonderful having all of you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Most welcome. You all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion this was a wonderful day. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Tarannu. Good evening, Arindam.
Hi, good evening, Meha. How are you?
Good, good. Mr. Bhadoria is also there. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening.
Evening.
Thanks,
We'll
Meha.
wait for we'll wait for 2 more panelists to join, and then we will start.
Sure.
Good evening, Mr. Bhatt.
Good evening. Good evening.
I'm Meha Mathur.
Yeah, I can see very well.
Yes.
It is readable.
So there's one more panelist who's just about to
Yeah,
join.
yes, we can wait for them.
Sure. So I think we can start, and we have one more panelist, and he'll join soon.
Right.
So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this discussion on budget and focused on employment. And as we all saw today, heard in the budget today, it was out and out budget on employment, skilling, education. And the finance minister stated at the outset that it is about these aspects, and she declared 1.48 trillion towards education, employment, skilling of the youth. And primarily, hearing the budget, there were three important schemes that she announced. One was the EPFO linked scheme benefiting the first-time employers, and wherein there would be 1 month salary transfer up to 15K to employees, drawing salary up to 1 lakh. The second important announcement was internship in 500 corporates to 1 crore youth. Now that was a very significant announcement. And then also support to MSMEs, support to women-led development programs. I would ask each one of you, so first of all, to introduce the panel, we have Mr. Arindam Lahiri, who is the CEO of Automotive Skills Development Council of India. We have Ajay Bhatt, the General Manager of BL Agro, and we are waiting for one more. We will be having Mr. Rajkumar Adokia. He is a chartered accountant, so he will be joining us shortly. But we
I'm already there. I'm there, man.
No, sorry. You are there. Rajiv Bhadoria, you are there. We have one more panelist who will be joining us. He will be joining us shortly.
Mr. Rajkumar, Dr. Rajkumar is also there.
I could not see him.
He's there. That's what you wanted. He's there.
Okay, fine. My apologies. So welcome to all the panelists. To begin with, I would like to ask each one of you, so what, according to you, were some of the, biggest, game changers, if we can call it, from this budget on the employment and skilling scenario?
Madam, first of all, I would like to thank our government as well as finance minister that I can see after 35 years of service, I can say that this is the first time that this is an employment-friendly and skill-development-oriented budget. Government is giving 2 lakh crores of rupees for skill development and this employment generation. As you said, they have given many facilities with PF. So automatically what will happen, the CTC of the candidate which he will be getting for new joining will increase. He is getting 3,000 rupees per month as a part of PF, 15,000 rupees maximum as a 1 month salary. So this will be additional benefit. This benefit is for the employer also, not only employed, but employer will be getting this benefit to employ the candidate. So this is first time when they are giving such type of benefits, and this internship program is a very focusing point that where industry is lacking. Industry is lacking in skilled candidates. When we go in the market and search for the skilled candidates, there's a lot of difficulties there. But when 500 companies will be selected and they will be training different type of operators, fitters, welders, these type of different trades. So it will be very easy to get the candidates in the market, and automatically it will boost employment in the market.
But since you mentioned about the internship program, the cost of it has to be borne by the private sector, the companies from their CSR
funds.
Budget.
Yeah.
So is the private sector on the same page as what the finance minister is saying?
I feel private sector will go for it up to some extent. They should not compel you have to give so much of intents. But originally we are doing this. The government is not saying to us, but as the apprentice or as the other factors, we are engaging these interns. What is this apprentice? Apprentice is also for intern. We are paying, and government is giving some amount like 2,500 rupees per candidate. So we are bearing 5,000 in this apprenticeship also. So we can bear.
Since you represent different sectors, agriculture, automotive sector, financial services. Would you say that the budget basically caters to all the different sectors, the whole gamut of economic sectors, or would you say certain sectors will have it better than other sectors? What would you say, Mr. Lahiri, Mr. Bhatt?
Madam, actually very early to comment on this because we have to go through the intricacies and we have to go through the budget deeply. We are just having a look and then we are discussing. So we have to go deep in the budget. We have to find out.
Okay. Mr. Lahiri, what would you say from automotive sector point of view?
Yeah. So I think overall, one view that I would like to share and put on the table is that in the past, while there has been some efforts of the government in terms of, supporting the entire skilling requirement for the industry, predominantly over the last a decade or so in terms of the Skill India mission that had been launched in 2015. So the focus of those programs were more to support the funding of the training itself without a specific focus on the outcome, which is employment in terms of employment support. Because at the end of the day, the whole skilling initiative must result in employment generation, so to say. So here, I think this is a very, very great step taken by the government under the visionary leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, that we are looking at supporting the first-time employees into the system as to how they can be benefited and which can also in turn help industry to actually employ these people for the first time. So we've already had this by the way of what Mr. Bhatt was talking about in terms of apprenticeship program. Already there has been a support of the government in terms of both financial and non-financial benefits. We see more of that coming in because you can do only up to 15% of your manpower in terms of apprenticeship, but these programs hopefully will add some additional numbers, which some of our industry members have been talking about, because as automotive industry, we are one of the leading industries in terms of adopting apprenticeship program for our requirements of manpower. When we have that kind of a pathway available for the youngster, there will be more interest and aspiration to go in for getting the skill training done. And therefore, one of the challenge that we have in terms of making skill training aspirational in this country, there are enough incentives in this budget that we see where the skill training, getting a skill training done, there are more enablers. There are enablers in terms of supporting the funding of the skill training program through government-backed funding arrangements, skill loans that we are talking about. We are talking about supporting women through women inclusion in the workforce, through working women's hostel. So there are various aspects of what the ecosystem faces a challenge, which has largely been covered by this particular budget.
Mr. Adukia, what would you have to say about the various schemes launched in this budget?
Yeah, good afternoon to everyone, Miyaji and co-panelists. I feel that this is very, very proactive budget, supporting the goal of Viksit Bharat, and the skilling, is the foundation for productivity, for growth. And when I see the 9 sectors, the innovation and infrastructure, like, when somebody who do not get the job 2-3 times, then I tell that person ki God is telling you that you are a job giver rather than job taker. So the entrepreneurship opportunities available, and if we see the yesterday's economic survey, the growth rate in employability has increased compared to the growth of the population in the employment sector. So I see all round when the 4 focus area: farmer, poor, youth, women, and when I see the 9 priorities, I feel there can't be a better budget than this.
To Mr. Bhadoria, I would ask
You call me Rajiv. I think Rajiv is good enough.
Okay. So I would like to ask you, how will all these schemes, they are brilliant to look at, but how will they be implemented on the ground, and what are some of the bottlenecks that you can see? Because it requires a lot of coordination with various agencies at central, at state level, in the private sector. How do you see it panning out on the ground?
Yeah, Meha, but before I delve into those specifics, actually, it will be fair enough, in fact, on our part to kind of, just look at the nature of this issue, because we are today dealing with employability and unemployment and underemployment together, all 3 of them. And the government was supposed to address this issue. And to the credit of the government, what they've done, and as Mr. Ajay said it for the first time, that somebody has done it actually on the employability, skilling, reskilling, and such issue has been addressed actually. Now, just talk about broad things. They have addressed all the 5 issues. They have provided incentives for the businesses. They have provided, sector-specific incentives. In fact, they've addressed the MSMEs, and they've also specifically addressed the sector of the agro-based industry and the agricultural, and the issue of youth employment with internships and, incentives being given accordingly, and for the first-time job seekers and the first-time job takers, both way, the employers and the employees both. And it has also addressed those issues which and sectors particularly which were hard hit by the pandemic. In fact, tourism and it has addressed that also. In fact, tourism and the hospital industry and the hospitality industry and the agriculture and the rural sector, basically primarily. But look at so they have done a good job, in fact, and I would say that, yes, it has been addressed, but look at the problem, look at the nature and the proportion of the problem that we have. So what needs to be further, because see, outlays are fine, but output, and as you rightly said, how will they ultimately be implemented? But let's not look at the bottlenecks, because bottlenecks will always be there. And 1-year budget is no good, in fact, to solve this problem, which is systemic. Now, just go back to the situation, the nature of the problem today. And I'll just give you first few data points, in fact, to address this, understand the nature of employment, underemployment, and unemployment in the country. You see, as far as employment goes, there are almost about 60% of the people who are in the, in fact, in the zone of informal sectors. Therefore, that's one issue. The other is that there are only 20% wage earners and there are 20% which are casual workers. And this proportion has remained for quite some time. The self-employed people have always been more, 60%, and primarily in the informal sector. So formalization has to take place in those category, that 20% of the wage earners. So that's one thing. And there, all the issues of, MSMEs, the SHG, the self-help groups, in fact, the JLGs and the individuals, they've all have to be addressed along with SMEs. So I would say overall, in a country where there are 600 million people with the total workforce, out of which 90% lie in the informal sector. So the good thing about the whole scheme that is there, at least a beginning has been made, that this issue has been brought on the fore and addressed in the manner it should have been. 90% of them are in the informal sector. Now, just look at the nature of the problem. 7 to 8 million people, youth, will get into this whole job seeking mode every year. Now, about 79 to 80 lakh of jobs have to be made available every year. And what kind of jobs? They are not the jobs which are old traditional jobs, because see, we are living in a VUCA and a BANI world where brittleness, anxiety, in fact, non-linearity and incomprehensibility is the issue today. For the workers also, for the future because unemployment primarily is in those people who are educated. You see, this whole thing. And 80% of the people unemployed amongst those who are employed is the youth of India, which is required for the digital dividend and the demographic dividend that we need to pay to get, in fact, in the next 10 years. So the larger issue must now, I think what I would also expecting from this budget was that a kind of a small mini white paper on the larger approach of the issue. Because see, these 1 or 2, 3, 4 activities, they are like, points which have been done, incentives, some money to be given as first timers, in fact, to join the company, first time job seekers, and incentivizing people, in fact, for apprenticeship, in fact, and making them pay from the this thing, from out of the CSR budget is very fine. It's a very good step, but let's not stop here, because what happens if we continue to say, well, this is not enough. In fact, this is not even the first step that logically, in fact, should be taken, in fact, around seeing that the kind of the gargantuan proportion of the problem that lies ahead of us. So if we look at from this point of view, it's like a very good step in the right direction, but a lot of things have to be done, because the corporate, see the larger corporate tax issue, which was, the corporates were given the incentives, in fact, and as Mr. Rajkumar would know, that the corporate tax was reduced. But now just look at the proportion of the income tax paid by the direct individuals and the corporate, that proportion is skewed totally. And the private investment did not come in. In fact, when the whole PLI schemes that were given, they were supposed to have come in private investment so that the energy gets a boost and job creation possibilities are created, which was not happening. So that was the issue, Meha. According to me, I think I thought that, we will put the entire issue at focus, that, it's not just one-sided issue. It's not a unipolarity that we're addressing. It's a multiplicity of issue. The cause is gargantuan. The problem is very big. And I think the good part of it is that we have made the good beginnings. In fact, we have addressed the right issues. We are looking at it in the right way. And but we should not say that one single thing will do a great job, because ultimately skilling, why it has failed? Because we today require reskilling and unskilling, in fact, also. So the point is that it has to have a very great approach to manage the future of jobs, and also differentiate, say, what we look in India, in fact, perhaps. And one of the issues that is very relevant to us today, when I was listening to the budget speech of the finance minister, was that we are thinking of jobs being a livelihood earners, that job is not job, it is work out of it. In fact, human beings do work, not just jobs. So there are two elements to that. One is, of course, livelihood matter. So livelihood we can address through this. But the future of jobs in the digital context that we are today has to give meaning and purpose to the people who work. So the quality of job also has to be assessed. Underemployment has to be addressed. Unemployment, okay, can be small, big. Let's not go by the numbers. The World Bank report, which says, ILO report talks of different issues, and the Indian report, and especially, the economic survey has given us a very, very, a bad picture of the fact that 1 out of 2 person is unemployable. This is a larger problem. And therefore, I wished in this budget, we should have addressed this whole issue of career education more from the education point of view, changing the curriculum of education, having, vocational credits so that laterally people could join at different colleges, more flexibility being provided, which is, of course, a part of the new education policy. But I think this is time that new education policy should have also found its expression in this whole, the budget of this year, and the allocation of funds being made accordingly.
We will be discussing that part in detail in another panel tomorrow. So
that's very nice. So I thought that, because
yes,
I was feeling a little uncomfortable talking about one single things here and there.
Yeah,
it has to be
totally.
a holistic
Yes.
picture is important for us to
Exactly.
understand
Yes.
that
Yes.
we are looking at the elephant as such, not just the limbs of the elephant.
Yeah. So since you have raised such an important issue and in fact taken the debate to another level altogether, I would like to ask the other panelists also about this particular budget as maybe the starting point for a greater vision for the next, maybe why just next 5 years, but maybe 2030. What would all of you have to say about the long-term vision that this budget starts? Maybe let's start with Mr. Lahiri, Mr. Bhatt, and Mr. Adhukia.
Mehaji, I first of all, I 100% agree what Bharojiji was saying, that when we specify the job, job means livelihood, how to earn a livelihood. And in India, if you go through the whole of the India, we cannot give so many jobs in certain organizations or government or the corporate sector or companies. So the concept of self-employment or developing small MSMEs, what the government has done in this budget also, I have seen that the credit guarantee scheme is increased. Mudra loan has been doubled. This 20 lakh to 10 lakh, from 10
And
to
loans
20
can be
lakh.
given. Educational loans have been.
Education loan is increased. So when we talk of the curriculum of the students, this entrepreneurship development should be given more stress.
Absolutely.
Don't be a servant. Try to don't try to be employed. Try to be employer also. Absolutely. So this vision of Modi ji should be spread, should be given stress, and more budget should be allotted to this type of education and development of self-employment, development of MSMEs. Because you see in this small sector, small MSMEs, a lot of employment is generated.
Yes.
So just take an example of this plywood industry or timber industry. Hundreds of labor are employed in one single shop.
The toy industry, you see, labor intensive.
Labor intensive industry. Yeah. So government should give more stress or allot more budget for education of entrepreneurship also to generate more and more self-employed or MSMEs.
Mr. Lahiri, would you like to add to that or make a closing comment?
I think from a perspective of the longer term, vision of this country to become Viksit Bharat, as the theme that we are all aligned to. Skilling, as I think Bhadoria ji has also talked about, while we have given a lot of focus into the first time employment into the industry, but continuing learning and relearning will have to be kind of also incentivized at some point in time, because the constant change in technology and the world that we live in, where there is a rapid digitalization, cyber-physical systems getting more commonplace in a very different applications. Even in learning systems, we have more cyber-physical interactions, blended learning, hybrid learning that we talk about in skilling also and in education also. And going forward, of course, the whole education and skilling, while we've seen these as two different verticals, but at some point in time, these will have to merge together and probably will have to coin a new term which encompasses both education and skilling, because one cannot do without both of them, essentially. So it has to be very integrated as a solution. So I think the journey has just begun, and it's a large country with a complex structure. So nothing can be done overnight. So it will obviously need that continuity of that vision for that country to move towards in that direction and have that achievement that people should be able to be attracted towards this country, because we have such a wonderful skilled workforce, and that is what should attract our country for everyone else around the globe, for us to become the center point of the global activities.
Since you mentioned about people to be attracted towards our country, I think one important announcement was that, the loans for higher education within the country. So I think that also in a way connects to what you are saying, that, the attempt is now more towards, having the
Can I add on that, Mehaji?
Yeah.
The higher education, see the skilling, we had 4 years back this new education policy 2020. The whole focus is shifted on vocational training and extracurricular apart from academic. So this scaling will take the output, productivity, self-employment to a different level. So the steps which are taken, I am a All India elected member in the Institute of Chartered Accountants. We had this result 11th of July of the CA's passing. It has been doubled. Like we are 4 lakh members. By 2047, we will be 40 lakh members. So the higher education, the emphasis is more, and therefore upgradation of various educational institutions, autonomousness, more vocational courses. So that will definitely help our country's growth rate. And, as we know, the GDP growing up, which is much higher than the developed country, 7%, where conservative approach 6.5 to 7. So I feel we are on a good path.
Yeah, in fact,
we have 2 minutes
just to
left.
end, I think we are falling short of time. I think we are towards the end.
Yes.
Am I right? We just have 4 minutes left.
Yeah, so closing remarks from all of
So
you.
I'll just make it. See, what I'm very interesting actually, because in this context, we need to understand where the jobs will be available, the future of jobs will be in which arenas, in fact, because see what's happening today is digitalization, the revolution, there is a sustainability revolution, and there's also larger purpose revolution. This is the way the future of the country and the future of the world. It's not only India-centric problem. The problem is that we have to understand the meta changes that are taking place. After all, data is today the new oil. AI is the new electricity. Green is the new digital. So the very good part that the government has done is that, and sustainability has to be the future, and it has to be profitable also. So just look at the changing paradigms. So the government has done very well, I must tell you, the finance minister, at least this whole stress on renewable energy, sustainability, and incentives around that is the most important thing, because green is the new arena of digital, where maximum employment will be there. And given the Indian context, 60% of the people as it is, we see are in the self-employment category. And 90% of them are in the informal sector here also. They're dealing, there's only the 10% which are dealing with the modern startups. So I think that kind of an approach, an education pattern which changes, which brings in more creativity, critical thinking, complex problem solving, not just the motor skills. So when we talk of skilling, it's all about competence, the domain knowledge, the skill, and the attitude and aptitude together. So it's a very larger question that we need to address. We have to kind of, look at what is the future of skilling, what is the future of job, what is the future of work as such for individuals and youth to be engaged with, so that they stay within the country and work for India, because we just have a decade ahead. That's all. We just have this window of next 10 years for our demographic dividend. Otherwise, we'll start aging as other countries have already started doing. So that point must be kept in mind. But I must compliment the finance minister's approach, in fact, and all the issues that have been at least, they've started to address now. But I think we should not end there. There should be a larger context of a white paper and a larger discussion, in fact, even for people like your Businessworld, Meha. We need to kind of, create a kind of a larger context in which, the job issue and the employment issue can be taken up, so that, it's aligned with Viksit Bharat and Viksit people also. We can't have a Viksit Bharat with unemployment.
I'm sorry the time is up, but it has been a wonderful discussion. And I think beyond the budget, all of you have really added to the whole discourse on future of work, as you rightly said. And I think this should not be the end of this discussion. Hope to have more such meaningful discussions.
In fact, Meha, one single year's budget cannot solve this problem. I mean, it's too much to expect from them. If we are talking in that term, that budget will do this, budget will not. It has given us a direction. Let's continue in this direction and do much more.
Viksit budget for Viksit Bharat.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about it. The direction is very clear, and very happy to see that. I was very happy that, yes, at least for the first time, that issue, it's not only the financial budget, it's more of a directional budget in that sense.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all my panelists.
Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Thanks.